This could be a two-part series if I wanted to make it that way. A lot of you asked me about the Montreal Canadiens and what they need to do as far as fixing the team based on their results against LA and Dallas. There's a lot that needs to be done, but in a very short period of time, because coming up tomorrow, we've got the Boston Bruins. Time to talk some puck. Hey gang, Costa here from PuckTalk Montreal. Thanks for joining us. I'm pulling out my coaching hat. So it's going to be a long one, and there's going to be a few chapters. So be sure to watch the chapter list at the bottom of your screen. Pick what you want, because there's going to be a lot going on. Right away, we'll take care of some business and take a look at our sponsors. CheapersT-shirts.ca has men's, women's, and children's t-shirts, all sizes, hoodies too, with over 1,000 products to choose from. Anything you need for merchandise or the best deals on everyday clothing, CheapestT-shirts.ca is your go-to source. Buy today, ship tomorrow, CheapestT-shirts.ca. InstaCustoms.com is Canada's highest rated print shop with over 3,000 Google reviews and a 4.9 star rating. They offer direct-to-garment printing on all your favorite clothing, along with coffee and travel mugs, and they even offer embroidery. Habs won a Stanley Cup? You can win too on Stanley Street at InstaCustoms.com. So let's first take a look at what's going on as far as injuries for the Montreal Canadiens. As we learned today, Alex Newhook, broken ankle. There were a lot of people that thought it was his knee that bent out of shape, but it looked obvious to me based on the way his ankle turned that something happened there. And for as bad as it is, as he had surgery today to repair that ankle, and he's going to be out for 4 months, it's the lesser of two evils. Because coming back from a sprained ankle is a hell of a lot more difficult than a clean break. So hopefully he heals quicker than the 4 months and he gets back into the lineup, because this is the best start he's had since his days in Colorado. So mend quickly there, Alex. And as far as Caden Gooley's injury is concerned, I know a lot of people are saying, oh, come on, man, he was on the ice. Well, here's the thing. He was on the ice to test it, because the one thing the Canadiens wanted to avoid was him going for surgery. Unfortunately, that's not the case. They call it the adductor muscle. In theory and in practice, it's what we call the groin. It's the inside muscle in your leg that helps you push laterally and extend your leg out. So, to be very clear, this happened in the preseason, and it's not the first time he's had groin issues. In 2022, in his rookie season, he missed part of the preseason because of groin issues. So there's a habit of pushing a little bit too hard in preseason as opposed to trying to pace yourself in order to be able to, handle the entire race, not just a sprint at the beginning, for lack of a better analogy. It's going to be unfortunate. Caden Gooley is a big part of our defense, and right now our defense is suffering big time. But it's not the D's fault, and I'm going to get to that in a second. Before I do, though, let's talk about goaltending, as we always do. And I know there's been quite a few people out there talking about the goaltending position. There's been discussion with me as far as the comments from the last show was concerned. And the Canadiens, at the beginning of the year, when Dobich was 6-0, we all sat there and said to ourselves, the Canadiens have a goaltending controversy. Well, now, just after these last two games, I think it's safe to say that the Canadiens have a goaltending problem. The problem is not necessarily the players, but more the coaching. And so what do the Canadiens do? There's no quick fix. And it's not like the Canadiens are going to get rid of Eric Raymond tomorrow. The problem with Eric Raymond, as I've always said, is the fact that the only reason he's got any type of an NHL job is because he worked with Igor Shesterkin in the American Hockey League with the Hartford Wolves. Or the Wolfpacks, the Wolves. They're out of Chicago. And so that got his attention, and the Rangers kind of, moved him up the ladder a little bit too quickly for my liking. And so you've got a guy in there who's got two relatively decent goaltenders right now. They're not by any stretch, they're not elite. Dobich is good. Monty is average right now. He could be better. But the issue is that the corrective measures that he's taking with the goaltenders isn't anywhere good enough. And it's easy to pinpoint what the problems are. Now, for tomorrow's game, the Canadiens have for some reason decided to put Sam Montembeault in goal. And now I say some reason because based on who the opponent is, I think the idea of putting Sam Montembeault in is absolutely stupid. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's their ass dumb on the part of the coaching staff of the Montreal Canadiens. And here's why. The Boston Bruins are a team that has success when they funnel pucks to the net. Okay, there's a handful of guys that can shoot the puck from the outside on this team. David Pastrnak, Pavel Zacha, Charlie McAvoy. There's not very many. But what they do extremely well is they funnel pucks to the net. They get them shots through traffic, and then they drive the net. And they shoot. Just watch the game against Ottawa the other night. They were down 2-0, and all of a sudden they came back with goals that, arguably were all on rebounds. So why would the Canadiens decide to put a rebound machine like Sam Montembeault in nets is beyond my comprehension. And I understand that Jakub Dobeš didn't have a great game against the Dallas Stars. I don't think anybody's going to say it was great by any stretch. He let in 5. But by the same token, the Canadiens gave up the slot like it was, candy on Halloween. I was thinking of a worse analogy in my head, but I came up with that one just to be clean. But so you're putting all this on Dobeš when, number one, when he was hot, you pulled him out of the net. I get putting Montembeault in for one to see how he's doing, but you put him in for 3 straight games, and he didn't do great. He didn't do bad, but he didn't do great either. So the reasoning behind keeping him in for 3 straight games, I don't get it. You had a goaltender who was playing with full confidence, and you decided to pull Monty out, to put Monty in because of pressure that was coming from the media, nobody else, and you let your goaltender go cold. There is no dumber thing to do than to submit to what the media tells you. And I'm not talking about the Anglophone media here. Nobody in the Anglophone side of things would say anything about Montembeault being put back in nets. This is strictly the French media. Journal de Montréal, RDS, TVA Sport, you name it. Here's the thing about Montreal that people need to get, and this includes the Francophone media. Throughout the history of the Montreal Canadiens, if you look back, you take a look at some of the players, the coaches, the administration. Some of the most famous names in hockey history are among those people. Frank Selke, Sam Pollock, Scotty Bowman, Toe Blake. The list goes on. Players, you've got all kinds of players who are Anglophones on this team. Steve Shutt, Larry Robinson, Bob Gainey. There are a lot of Hall of Famers that played for the Montreal Canadiens, and when they were winning Stanley Cups, nobody gave a shit what language they spoke. They just worried about, hey, are we winning cups? Yay, let's go. Now, because we succumb to what the French media believes is a lack of Quebecois players on the NHL squad, they pressure you to put the Quebecois goaltender in so that they get their quota or whatever you want. Well, let me tell you something. You've got Alexandre Carrier. You've got Zach Bolduc. There are more Francophones on this team than a lot of people realize. And no, they're not having great success at this moment. Carrier, he's been a little bit of a sieve defensively. Bolduc, gone cold after his hot start at the beginning of the year. And so you got Montembeault and you decide, because Montembeault was good last year, we should put him back in. Goaltenders lose their game quite often. And there's no harm in that happening so long as they work to get it back. And right now, Montembeault's game is not back. It is not good. It is nowhere near good enough for NHL quality games. His save percentage is .847 for crying out loud. And you're putting him in nets against the Boston Bruins, who are at the top of the division with you. I don't understand. I'll never understand. You may very well turn around and say that Dobeš is a rookie, but I'm telling you that Dobeš gives you a better chance to win right now than Sam Montembeault. Pure and simple. And watch. If the Bruins don't pump Montembeault for 5 tomorrow, I will eat crow. Now, let's talk about some of the coaching changes that everybody's asking me about the Canadiens. Now, I'm going to preface this by talking about Marty St. Louis' strengths and his weaknesses. And some of those weaknesses come because there are some people that just aren't in place as yet. And I'll explain. If there's one thing that we know about Marty St. Louis, his ability to coach guys one-on-one and give them advice is beyond reproach. We've seen him turn players that were struggling into superstars. And he will continue to do that because he understands the game extremely, extremely well. But he sees it from one side. And the other part of it is you look at guys like Trevor Slafkovsky and Stefan Robida. Both those guys, diminutive in stature. I think Slafkovsky is 5'11", and he was a utility player when he or whatever. He was a depth player on all the teams that he played for. And when you look at Stefan Robida, his best years were with the Dallas Stars, and he played tough, well above his weight, despite the fact that he was a smaller player. But all that being said, you need to have variance when you're teaching, right? Like if I went out and coached, I spent the majority of my career, not in nets, but as a defensive forward. And I had to adapt. I had to adapt to when I was asked to go play nets. I had to adapt to when I was asked to change my game to be more offensive. And I had to change my game when it was just called for by the coach, right? And so all players have to adapt to situational play, no matter what, even if you're the most offensive player on your team. Case in point, somebody like a Patrick Laine, who was asked to focus on 5-on-5 play before his injury. So all that adaptation comes along through coaching. But the thing is you can't have a guy who is offensively gifted as a coach teach you the defensive side of the game because they only understand their side of it. They don't get the whole package, right? And Slafkovsky didn't play enough to really say, okay, I've got enough there. So what do? Well, the Canadiens have money. Not only that, but they have a lot of guys that have depth with their game. But here's the thing. You have an alumni pool, second to none. Second to no other team in the National Hockey League. So there's no harm in turning around and asking one of those guys, hey, can you come out and do a couple of sessions with my boys? I mean, if you're going to hire guys to be coaches, it doesn't necessarily mean it's 1, 2, 3 behind the bench and that's it. Back in the day when Guy Carbonneau was the coach of the Montreal Canadiens and the Canadiens had success when he was there, it wasn't because Carbo was so overly great at coaching. He had a secret weapon. That secret weapon was Andy Murray, who was up in the stands, watching every game, evaluating every other team, and coming back with a scouting report this thick on every team that allowed Carbonneau to make the right decisions to be able to be as prepared as possible against the opposition he was facing. Didn't matter what team it was. Murray had a report on everybody. Is that being done now? It doesn't look that way because we sit here and we discuss things over the podcast time and time again. And the one thing that we say to ourselves is we can see that Montembeault is giving up rebounds. So what do? Well, you get away from fronting and you get your guys in front of the net to be able to box out players that are coming to the net. It's a simple concept, right? But if I can see that and I can understand that part of it, why am I asking my defenseman to front? Okay? Take away that you want the defenseman to block shots. Take it out of their equation altogether. And tell them, guys, as opposed to blocking shots, I want you to clear the front of the net. Let the goalie see the shot. And then you could turn around and say, you know what? It's the goalie's fault after when pucks go in. But if you're going to front and you're going to leave the opposition behind you, well, then don't start blaming the goalie for everything. Although there are some shots where you just have to. But overall, there are so many little things that the Canadiens need to do to correct things. And they're all tactical. None of them are individual skills. Obviously, the only individual skill right now that the Canadiens need to shore up after the last 2 games is taking faceoffs. And the worst part about all this is today's practice for the Canadiens was turned into an optional. You had 3 or 4 guys on the ice. I find that absolutely ridiculous. And Marty St. Louis came out and said he did his job. Well, if they watched video and they assessed how the games went, then yes, you did your job. Because you don't have to be on the ice to make corrective measures happen, right? You have to take a look at situations. But the thing is, you also have to adopt drills so that players can put it into practice prior to getting on the ice against their opposition. So the right way to do it would have been video session, practice. But that's not what happened. So we'll see how that translates in tomorrow's game. But getting back to the whole coaching thing, I always sit here and I tell you guys the Canadiens have to control the neutral zone and they have to control the middle of the ice, right? Now, how are the Canadiens supposed to do that? Well, in the neutral zone, there are two ways to control it. There's employing a 1-3-1 and there's a 1-1-3. Okay? Here are the two differences as you look at them. Okay, here's my whiteboard. Let's say the opposition is in blue and they're attacking with the puck, right? They're coming up the ice. So your 1-1-3, Canadiens in red here, is 1, 2, and then 3 guys. Oops, that's horrible. 3 guys lined up. Okay? And what that does is if a player decides in blue to skate over to one side, then the team in red applies forechecking on the puck in support, and the 3 players remain flat. The only thing is this player shades across, and then you've got an outnumbered situation. They're forcing the other team to dump the puck in. Okay? That's your 1-1-3. Oops. Let's do that again. When it comes to your... How do I erase on this thing? Hang on. There we go. When it comes to the 1-3-1, with the 1-3-1, it's a little more aggressive, where your opposition has the puck and is beginning to come up the ice. Let me put him a little bit further back, okay? And they come up the ice. Well, your 1-3-1 is 1, 3, and 1. And what this does is you become aggressive on the puck carrier, and then you force the wave to go on that side, right? This defenseman here and this forward here, they cover the back end and they defend against odd man rushes. And then you've got 3 players over here that are actually trying to create an on-man situation with the puck carrier, trying to force the puck off of him, right? Now, more often than not, you'll see teams break this down and come through it by, waiting and forcing the forward to forecheck a little bit more into their own zone. That creates a gap in the neutral zone, right? So let's say, as an example, the puck is deep in the opponent's zone and somebody like a Jake Evans comes in and he's in between the hash marks forechecking, right? Player comes out from behind the net. Evans goes to that side to forecheck. They're still inside the zone. It creates a gap between the 1 and 3, at which point the opposition could get players in between, create lanes, and actually break down the 1-3-1. The idea is, though, is keep the 1-3-1 as tight as possible. And the majority of teams, including the Montreal Canadiens, employ a 1-3-1 in the neutral zone. But you need to have it clustered. The only downside to having it clustered is you're susceptible to the long stretch pass. But for the percentage that those passes actually hit, moving your 1-3-1 up the ice as a cluster and defending the neutral zone like that is a much higher percentage play than the 1-1-3, where you've got 2 guys forechecking and you're basically stacking up at your own blue line. So there's the 2 ways to control the neutral zone. The other thing, too, that I noticed as I was watching the Bruins game that the Montreal Canadiens do not do, but the Bruins do, is that they come up the ice, and as they're coming up the ice, they like to crisscross in between the dots, right? So if I were to talk to you about in between the dots, as I clear this thing for you and come back to it, this is your area in between the dots. There's one line, there's the other. This is the area of the ice that the game is won and lost in. If you don't play the majority of your game in that area of the ice, don't expect to win, because you don't end up with high quality scoring chances, because most of your chances come from the outside, and that's what teams are trying to do. If anything, while the Bruins funnel pucks towards the net, while they're defending, they're trying to funnel players to the outside, which gives their goaltenders a better percentage chance of stopping pucks. So if anything, against the Bruins, the Canadiens need to make sure that they dominate that middle area of the ice. Pure and simple. Beyond that, how much more of an adjustment do you need? The Canadiens need to get strong on the forecheck? Absolutely. They're too passive. They're not hard on the puck carriers at all. And so when you give teams time and space to create plays, you're going to get burned. And we saw that way too often against Dallas. Against Dallas, I said, if there's one thing Dallas cannot do is they cannot handle speed coming into their own zone. And what were the Canadiens? Slow, like they were skating in quicksand. And so the Dallas defense allowed themselves to be a little bit more physical, get pucks up to their forwards, and their forwards are not only quick, but they're physical, and they go to the front of the net. Something that the Canadiens forwards just don't do, and I can't understand why. I get the team is young. I get the team is small. But in this day and age with the NHL, what's going to happen if you go to the front of the net? Oh, you're going to take a little bump in the back? If you get knocked down, it's a cross-check or interference. But why not play where your best percentage chances to score are? Why are you on the outside? And for the love of God, why do you play below the goal line? There aren't a lot of teams that do that anymore. You know, you might use it on the power play because you have that extra man advantage, and that's fine. But putting a guy below the goal line at 5-on-5 is absolutely stupid. Because then what do? What happens is that guy goes below the goal line. He's not scoring from there. And what the other team does is they end up with a man advantage because they just ignore you behind the goal line. They don't bother chasing you. They let you come back out. They'll shadow you. In the meantime, they create a 2-on-1 situation on a possible player that you want to use as an option to get a scoring chance. So stop playing below the goal line. Stop playing on the outside, on the perimeter. And for the love of God, shoot the damn puck. I can't emphasize this enough. When you're a team that's struggling for offense, stop being so fine offensively. And I don't care what your philosophy is as a coach. You need to learn to start peppering goaltenders. You cannot be that precise with anything in hockey. Hockey's a game of mistakes, all right? So you're not going to win by trying to be perfect, because while you're trying to be perfect, you're going to make mistakes along the way. And for the love of God, the last thing I'm going to tell you here that the Canadiens need to adjust, they absolutely need to focus on playing defense and back-checking their asses off. Because the game against Dallas, nobody back-checked. And so you left the defense to their own devices. That's not fair to them. It's not fair to your goaltender. And it sure as hell isn't fair to anybody else. So the forwards, they need to get to work. It can't be just a handful of them. It's got to be the entire team. Line 1 through 4, you got to back-check hard. Period. There's no shortcuts in hockey. Everybody should have learned that a long time ago. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk a little bit about what the Bruins are going to bring to the table. So, the Bruins lineups, as I bring it up here on my screen, and I will bring it up for you in a second. Come on. So slow, this thing. There we go. So the Bruins lineups look like this. Morgan Geekie, Marat, Kostadinov, and David Pasternak make up the first line. Alexander Steeves, Pavel Zacha, and Victor Arvidsson the second. Tanner Janot, Fraser Minton, and Mark Kostelik the third. Jeffrey Veal, Sean Corrali, and Michael Esimont make up the fourth. Now, here's the thing about the Bruins. They don't depend on one line to provide all the scoring. And this is Marco Sturm that's coaching this team, not anybody else. Right? This is a quality coach. He came back to the Bruins after coaching in Europe for I don't know how many years. And so he's got the Bruins playing fundamentally strong hockey. It was the first thing they needed to do because last season, it was an absolute mess with the Bruins. This year, completely different team. Reminding me a little bit more of the team 2 years ago that won so many games and won the President's Trophy. So the Bruins are getting back to that. Sure, they don't have Brad Marchand. Sure, they don't have Charlie Coyle anymore. But they've got Charlie, is it Charlie Coyle? Anyway. But they've got Charlie McAvoy back there. They've got David Pastrnak at forward. They've got Pavel Zacha at center on that second line. And they do have a few injuries, which I'm going to outline. But this forward group, if there's one thing that they do extremely well, is they put pucks to the net. That, key for them and their success so far. On defense, they've got Nikita Zadorov and Charlie McAvoy, who I mentioned, Hampus Lindholm, Andrew Peeke, and Mason Lohrei, and Jonathan Asperat. Not the greatest decor, but they're very effective. Zadorov is an absolute monster back there. We know what McAvoy brings to the table offensively. Hampus Lindholm, another quality defenseman. So there is some good on that back end. It's not great, but it's better than decent. And then when you look in front of the net, I mean, it goes without saying, tomorrow, Jeremy Swayman is expected to start. Jonas Korpisalo started the last game against Ottawa. So I would presume in a game with such importance in the division that Swayman would get the start. And then, as I mentioned, the injuries, you got Jordan Harris on the back end who's injured, Elias Lindholm up front, John Beecher, and Casey Middlestat all out of the lineup. So, the Bruins are not exactly the healthiest team in the National Hockey League, but then again, neither are the Montreal Canadiens. Missing Patrick Laine. And yes, there are a lot of people that are now saying they miss Patrick Laine, and with good reason. The Canadiens are having trouble scoring goals. You need a goal scorer. Patrick Laine is a goal scorer, period. Despite the fact that he was struggling and he was playing more of a defensive game and getting used to that, playing on the fourth line, I think that a lot of people are wondering why the hell that all happened in the first place. Then you've got, the injury to Alex Newhook. Of course, what's his name again? Why am I drawing a blank? Who got called up today? Oh, my brain's fried. Oh, my God. I'm going to see this and I'm going to say, hey, that's it. Hang on. As I look at my feed, give me 1 sec. I'm so sorry because my brains are fried. Oh, come on. Why can't I see his name? Come on. There you go. Jared Davidson. Pardon me for being such a airhead. Jared Davidson getting called up. He's the hottest player on the Laval Rocket right now, so justifiably being called up to play probably alongside Kapanen and Demida, but we'll see. Personally, I'd like to see the Canadiens move Bolduc up to that position to give him a little bit of another shot at scoring goals, which he showed that he could do to start the season. Why he got pushed down to the third line, beyond me. But, a little bit of depth at the forward position was required, I guess, at that point. So, Davidson coming up, Canadiens still staying with the same 6 defense. And that's something I have a problem with. Because right now you've got your bottom 6 and 7 defensemen in the lineup at the same time. Struble, the last 2 games, has struggled mightily. And that's affected the play of Lane Hudson. Hudson, not nearly as good on the defensive side because he's got no backup. Normally, when he's got somebody that could back him up defensively, he plays a hell of a lot better. And I said this prior to the season starting, that those two, Struble and Hudson, would get exposed if they played together for a prolonged period of time. Everybody was talking about their analytics last year. See, this is a pair of eyes. And what you don't see through numbers is what you see when they play together. And the thing about Struble is when he gets pressured, he makes mistakes. And when he makes mistakes, they end up in the back of the Canadiens' net. You cannot have those two guys together. What do? Well, the Canadiens apparently have depth on defense. Why not bring up an Engstrom? You got nothing to lose, do you? Bring up Engstrom as a 7th defenseman and leave him there. Let's see what he can bring to the table. I can't understand why the Canadiens haven't done that yet. You want him to play more? Okay. Justifiable. David Reinbacher just got back, so you're not going to ask him to come up. But Engstrom, who was one of your last cuts in the preseason, I think it's worth giving him a shot to see what he can bring to the table at the NHL level right now because you need that extra help. Goulie's out long term. You need to start making adjustments. Bring the kid up. It's as simple as that. Now, as usual, I'm going to bring up my 5 keys to victory for the Montreal Canadiens in this game against the Boston Bruins. So what are those keys? Well, number one, they need to win the net front battle, and they need solid goaltending. Those two go hand in hand. And as I mentioned, I don't want the Canadiens to front. If you're going to win against the Bruins, you need to get the Bruins out of the crease and out of the front of the net. If there's one thing that Sam Montembeault has proven time and time again, is he has a hard time tracking pucks around the screen. So if you allow the screen to remain there, as I mentioned, seeing 4 and 5 goals get pumped on Montembeault is a very strong possibility. So clear the net front, win the battle, and let your goalie do the work. Okay? That's the only way you're going to beat the Bruins. The Bruins feed off of funneling pucks to the net and going in for rebounds. So the Canadiens need to box them out, clear the net front, and give Sam Montembeault a fighting chance to stop pucks. And the one thing Montembeault has to do, he has to have better rebound control. Cover pucks when they're in tight. Don't push them away like you did the other night, and it led to a goal. Like, I forget who it was that put it in from LA. It was Kevin Fiala. You gave it right to him on a stick. That's bullshit. Cover that puck. Help your defensemen out because they're going to try to help you. It goes both ways. Number two, they've got to make sure they establish a defensive structure early. If you start with a good 1-3-1 in the neutral zone and you forecheck hard, it's going to cause the Bruins fits. They're a strong team, but they don't have the offensive talent they had maybe 2 or 3 years ago that could circumvent a strong defensive structure. That's out of the way now. They're much more blue-collar, in-your-face team than they were before. It's typical Boston Bruins hockey, but it's not as skillful as it used to be. So if you set up your defensive structure early, you get into your 1-3-1, you clog up the neutral zone, force the Bruins to dump the puck in deep, and let your defensemen use their legs to move the puck, skate it up the ice, and get out on a fast breakout, you're not only going to be out of your own zone faster than you blink, but you're also going to create transition offense, which the Canadiens need desperately at this moment. And as I mentioned, their breakouts, they need to be disciplined, for lack of a better term. They need to be controlled, they need to be structured, and they need to be quick. Because the Bruins, they will punish you if you don't get the puck out quickly. If you take too much time deciding what you're going to do with the puck, you're going to get a shoulder in the face. It's one thing that the Bruins do excessively well is forecheck, hard. So if the Canadiens can beat the forecheck, move the puck up in a disciplined manner, and manage that puck by mitigating the giveaways and making sure that their passes are crisp, they're going to have a chance to beat the Bruins. Special teams, hugely important. The Canadiens need to get back to scoring goals in the power play. They've gotten away from it. Okay, and it's not for lack of being able to move the puck around. It's just that I keep mentioning it's a lack of pulling the trigger on shots and trying to look for rebounds. The power play is not an excuse for perfection. The power play is an opportunity to create openings where there normally aren't any at 5-on-5. You control the puck in the zone, you move it around, you force the other team to expand and contract their box, and when the opportunity is right, you pounce. If it's not, then you got to start shooting the puck. As an example, let's say the Canadiens establish possession in the offensive zone. Boston's in their box. The Canadiens start moving the puck around. 10 seconds. If you don't have a clear shot in 10 seconds, then you've got to take one anyway. Generate offense. Create rebound opportunities. Something. But you can't keep moving the puck around the zone for 45 seconds to a minute. That's what the defending team wants you to do. They want you to move it around the perimeter. They don't want you to try to get it into the bumper. They don't want you taking shots on goal. They just want you to move it around. And if you move it around enough, you kill off more penalty than they do. And what happens? Eventually the puck will get cleared down the ice. Your first unit will go off, second unit comes on, and they'll have to go back in, establish possession, the whole thing. And with Alex Newhook out, your second wave player who normally comes in off the slingshot and carries the puck into the zone, he's not there for the next 4 months. Who do you put in that place? Well, if we've seen anything, the Canadiens are going to try to lean on Nick Suzuki. The problem is, as I've mentioned, he's seeking therapy day in and day out on his leg. Which one? I'm not sure. But either way, he's hurting. He's getting therapy. He's getting treatment. You can't use him for 2 minutes at a time on the power play. You got to mitigate his time. You got to let the man heal. But by the same token, you can't limit his time enough where it hurts the team. There's a happy balance there that the Canadiens need to find. So the power play needs to score, and it needs to score early and quickly. And one thing that you need to do, lastly, against the Boston Bruins is avoid them setting a physical tone. They've got some beef on that team. Whether you're looking on the back end at Zadorov or up front if you're looking at Janot or even Zaka for that matter. There's a lot of guys on that team, especially on the third and fourth line, that like to throw the body. Janot, Esaimont, they all like to throw it. Kastelik scored a goal against the Ottawa Senators the other day by driving the net. I mean, there's all these things. These guys are physical, right? It's the Boston Bruins. They play Boston Bruins hockey. It's in your face, it's physical, and the Canadiens are a fast enough team to be able to avoid all that. But in order to avoid all that, as I mentioned, you stay off the perimeter, you play in the middle of the ice, right? That forces the Boston Bruins out of position and creates offensive opportunities for Montreal. The Bruins aren't comfortable playing defensively in the middle of the ice. I can tell you that without a shadow of a doubt. You play on the perimeter, you're playing right into their strength. So keep the middle of the ice, avoid the physicality, win that physicality battle by avoiding it, and you're going to be fine. Now, in closing, do I think the Montreal Canadiens are going to win the hockey game? Man, I wish I could outright say yes. But given their last two performances, where I've been extremely disappointed in their play, there's no way to say yes. Do I think the Bruins are going to win? Unfortunately, yeah. I think the Bruins are going to pump the Canadiens. The Bruins have been playing excessively good hockey. I think they've won their last 6 or 7 games. So, Swayman off against the Ottawa Senators. He'll be between the pipes against Montreal. Montembeault for Montreal. As I said, Montembeault's game plays right into the Bruins' strengths, which is funneling the puck towards the goal and coming in to get rebounds. So what do you think? Did I give you enough from a coaching perspective to understand what the Canadiens need to do to correct it? I mean, clogging the neutral zone, mitigating the speed of the Bruins. And if there's more that you want me to talk about, by all means, put it in the comments because I'm more than happy to lay it out there. And I thoroughly enjoyed the comments from the last show. Whether it was forgive me for not remembering your name, but one of the viewers described goaltending as like being in a hurricane. The best place that a goaltender wants to be is in the eye of the storm because it's clear and you're able to see everything. And he's right about the goaltending in that sense. Because when you're in a groove as a goaltender, you're in the eye of the hurricane. And what the Canadiens did, as this listener mentioned, is they took Jakub Dobeš, who was in the eye of the hurricane, and decided to pull him out. You got to stop doing that. When you've got a hot hand, you stick with it, no matter what. If he falters, then you decide what to do. Early on in the season, Dobeš played his best hockey. In his 5th game, he allowed 3 goals, and they switched back to the Montembeault. I don't have a problem with that because that was the most goals he had allowed through that first streak, right? So you put Montembeault back in. Montembeault has problems. You put Dobeš back in. Dobeš wins again. You don't go back to Montembeault. And that's the mistake the Canadiens made. So let's see what happens tomorrow night. I'm hoping and praying for a Habs win. I'll pray to the hockey gods. I know you will too. But I don't know if it looks great for the Montreal Canadiens. It's going to be a tough one. And hopefully it's one of those games that rekindles the rivalry that we all loved so much when we were kids. Because Bruins-Montreal hockey and that rivalry, it's legendary. And I want it back. I hope you do too. We'll talk after the game tomorrow.